Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thibault, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
End of your heart, call after me. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Pacala?
Yes.
Director McMillan?
Yes.
Director Robert?
Yes.
Director Quady?
Here.
Director Avila?
Everyone's here. A forum. Item 2, public comments. This portion of the agenda may be utilized by any member of the public to address the board of directors on any matter within the jurisdiction of the board that does not appear on the agenda and on matters that are on the agenda but are designated as action items. Depending on the subject matter, the board of directors may be unable to respond at this time or until the specific topic is placed on the agenda at a future Calleguas board meeting. In accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act, please limit remarks to 3 minutes.
If any member of the public online would like to make public comment at this time, please use the raise hand feature. I see no raised hands.
Item 3, do we have any presentations?
We do not.
Any items to be added to the agenda?
No.
Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. Has the board had time to review the minutes? Since it is the only item on the agenda.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and would anyone like to
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a first. We have a second.
Second.
Second, we have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Director Pacala?
Yes.
Director McMillan?
Yes.
Director Robert?
Yes.
Director Quady?
Abstain.
Director Avila?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Item 6 is consideration of a notice to set time and date of a public hearing regarding annual adjustments to the district water rates and fees.
Yes, our manager of finance, Dan Smith, will be handling this item.
Hello, Dan. Welcome back.
Yeah, we're happy to see Dan here
Nice to see you.
in person and healthy.
I agree. I'm happy to be back. Right. Good evening, directors. We're going to be going over water rates, some of the budget, and then a little look at the long-range finance plan. And then we'll talk about the next steps that are going to be happening for this process. So first to talk about water rates. Water rates, we have the tier 1 water rate, which is our variable rate. It does make up from the metropolitan treated water charge. There's 4 components of it from the Met rate. They have a tier 1 charge, then there's an access charge, power charge, and then the treated water surcharge on top of that. That does make up about 75% of our tiered 1 rate. So theirs is the biggest portion of what we have to pay. We pay it out to Metropolitan. But the tier 1 rate also composes of 2 pieces from us. There's an operating rate and a construction rate. That's helps us fund our district operations. We do have some fixed charges. There's the capacity charge. There's both the Metropolitan and Calleguas portion of that, and then the readiness to serve, which is again, all Metropolitan. To kind of go over some of these fixed charges real quick, the capacity charge from the Metropolitan side is based on a peak day, May 1st through September 30th. And it's based on the previous 3 years, which is right now 22 through 24. And just to kind of give you a clue of kind of what we're at, like the old peak day up until now was at 189.6 CFS. That was in 2021. That one just dropped off. Now we have a new peak day of 167.1 CFS that we set in 2024. The district does monitor this as we go along through the operations center to try to control the CFS that's coming from Metropolitan, to control this during the May 1st through September 30th time period. Helps us manage the cost coming from Metropolitan. The Metropolitan costs recover costs of the assets that are providing peak capacity in their system. And then they charge it to all the purveyors, all of their purveyors. The Calleguas capacity charge is based on a peak week demand. So it's a little bit different than Metropolitan, but it's during the same time period, May 1st through September 30th. And we do look back 1 year. So we're looking back at the 2024 data. So we already have the data at this point. For us, this recovers the cost of the assets that are providing emergency supply. So it's a little different than what Metropolitan does because we're looking at it from an emergency standpoint. So if we're cut off from Met, we need to provide water to our other agencies, and it's not a normal operation. And so we've had to build assets in order to provide this service. That includes like the well field, the Cranston pump station, the power generators, even the plant, the Lake Bard well field plant up here, the Lake Bard distribution plant. So that if we don't have water from Metropolitan, we can then produce the water that is needed. Our rate also recovers the Metropolitan capacity charge. So we put that in with our capacity charge and then distribute it out to all of our purveyors. The readiness to serve is a little bit easier for us. The Metropolitan side, they have amounts that are recover the capital costs of the portion of the system that is on standby for their purveyors. And then they take that and divide it to all their purveyors by a rolling 10-year average. We sort of take that dollar amount that Met charges us and we just roll it right out to the purveyors, our purveyors, based on the same kind of allocation. It's a 10-year rolling average. So it's really just an in and then an out for us from the readiness to serve charge. So looking at the water rates, starting with Metropolitan again, they have a biennial rate setting process, which means they set their rates once for a 2-year time period. So the rates for both 2025 and 2026 were adopted last April 9th, 2024. I do have the last 2025 rate adjustments that were on there. Overall, their rate increase was 9.6. They had a larger than this year increase on their tier 1 rate of 11.1%. And they are having some strong increases in both the CC, their capacity charge, and the RTS. So you can see that they're 16.1 and 8.8%. In 2026, their overall rate increase is 8.8%, which includes a 9.5% increase in their tier 1 rate. They're again increasing their capacity charge rate by 11.5% and another RTS increase of 7%. So we're still seeing these large increases coming from Met, but we knew this was coming because they adopted both at the same time. So everybody knew this was coming for this year and they didn't change anything. I'm looking at the overall rates, which includes Metropolitans. You can see the 9.5% rate increase up there. For our rates, we're looking at 6% overall for the district. That includes a 6.1% increase on the O&M side, the operation side, as well as a 5.9% increase for the construction side. I'll get into a little more of this, I think, as we go through the budget to get some explanation of where these monies are going. But overall, when we combine these two, that ends in an increase in the tier 1 rate, 8.6% for 2026. So taking that and I build that into the Calleguas long-range finance plan, here's kind of a look at where the water rates are going. You can see some of the large increases for this year, and it continues for the next couple of years for Metropolitan. I am including a 13.9% increase in 2027, an 8.1% increase in 2028, and then it drops down a little bit to 5.3 and 4.3. These numbers are actually from Metropolitan. They gave me a breakdown from when they did the 25-26 increases and I got it spread out for the treated water surcharge specifically. So this is based on what they're giving us. The 13.9% does include a little bit of an extra bump in there because they are doing stuff up in Metropolitan right now that could result in some additional increases. And we do sort of see that happening. So I wanted to start building it into my projections. None of that is final yet. Nothing's been approved by the Met board, but it's probably going to be there in the next year or less. Looking at the fixed charges, you can see that we actually had some decreases, which helped us this year in this. The Metropolitan capacity charge actually decreased for us, and that really had to do with that drop in the CFS that I was showing you on a previous slide. That drop offset the increase in their rate, making us have a little bit of a decrease in theirs. For our capacity charge, I went through the list of assets that were in there, And I was making adjustments to the useful life, and I was extending some of these the capacity charge assets, which actually lowered the amount that we're gonna have to collect on an annual basis, but it does push it out for collecting. So it helped us lower the rates this year for our purveyors by a total of 5.8%. And that's reflected in the rate that we're setting and using the capacity charge, the CFS that we had for 2024, which is the 143.06 CFS. That's what our purveyors took from us based on all their individual peak weeks. Looking at the readiness to serve, you can see that is going up by 8.1% for us. The reason it doesn't quite match the 7% that was on the previous slide is because there's two components to this. One is the amount that they're increasing the dollar amount that needs to be collected. The other part of it is the fact that our sales are increasing compared to everybody else. I think that part of that reason is because we've started taking some of that water and sticking it in the well field for storage. That is a water sale. So it's not just based on the water sales that we are doing and selling to our purveyors. It's actually including the water sales that we're buying and putting into the storage. That does not include the prepaid water. That won't be hitting us until we actually take the water. But we have been putting water into storage as we've been going along. We used water during the drought and we replenished it. That's still a water sale. So overall, our readiness to serve increased to 8.1%. I do want to point out, this is a graph of just the metropolitan capacity charge and RTS. And you'll see that there are some very large increases coming based on what Metropolitan's doing. This is again, right off the information from Metropolitan from their last 10-year forecast. This has to do partly with this Pure Water Southern California plan that they have out there, that those are the rates they're giving us right now. If it's not Pure Water, it's going to be another project. So it just kind of made sense to conclude them in there, but it is increasing all of their rates significantly as we're going along. And this is all built into the long range finance plan as well. So when we get to the overall rates, this includes the RTS and the capacity charge. You can see that Metropolitan's rates are going up by that 8.8%. Overall, our 6% dropped down to a 4% because of the decrease in the capacity charge from us. So we're looking good there. When we combine everything, we're looking at a 7.5% increase overall to the purveyors when we average this out. The other thing that also helped some of these percentages was that I am increasing the water sales for 2026 up to 75,000 acre feet. So right now, we're a little ahead of where we are for the water sales this year. You'll see in the water sales from our presentation coming up. We're on pace to do a little over 76,000 right now. That's if we hit the budget perfectly for the next 3 months from April, May, and June. Not sure if that's going to happen. We've been off for the last 2 months, so I'm kind of keeping it conservative and putting it 75,000 right now. It's taken us a while from the drought to get to this point, so I felt that this is still a conservative but accurate number to be budgeting off of it for this time. Here's a focus on all of the rates looking forward. Again, out of the long range finance plan. You can see that, these all in rates are still hitting 11% plus next year or the following year, and then 8% and slowly coming back down. You'll also notice, I'm going to point out that even though I did 75,000 acre feet this year, I did lower the forecast for the water sales the year after that back to the 73,000 something. It's much easier from a perspective to be able to manipulate that in the future, which will help us decrease rates. I'd rather be saying, hey, we're going to have more water sales in 2027 and I can decrease our because of that, rather than doing it the other way and saying I have to now raise them because we're short on water. Some of the other rates we have in there, are looking for increases on the SMP rates that will be part of this public hearing. These are tied to whatever the tier 1 water rate increases are. So we're increasing them by 8.6% as well. We've got the wheeling rate that's going to be going up 15.3%. That's a little higher than usual because I sort of did the same thing. I went through all the assets that are used for the wheeling rate and redistributed some of the useful life on them, but I was kind of going the opposite direction on that. So it increased the dollar amounts and also then increase this dollar, but it's only going from $29.30 to $33-$34. So it's not a huge increase per acre foot. Our water sales are also going down for a 10-year average, which is also increasing this. And the annexation fee is going up by 5%, which is pretty standard for the annexation fee. With that, I'm going to stop and pause and see if there are any questions on the water rates that we're going to be setting for 2026.
Okay, go ahead and open this up to public.
Just know
comment.
that, sorry, there's a budget, this is not the whole presentation.
I'm just pausing.
Pausing, because that was a lot of information. And then there's two other
There's going to be
other
another.
segments to the presentation.
Got it.
So I would recommend we hold off on any public comment until the entire presentation is complete.
You're correct. Dr. McCollum.
Well, Dan, well, there's a lot of information there, so many different types of rates. Just for my information, so Metropolitan does 2-year rate increases at any given time, right? So this year they're going to do, I guess, 27, 28?
Yes, they will be looking at starting their 27-28 budget cycle pretty soon.
There's 2-year budget cycle for that?
They don't do 2 years every year. They do it in 2-year increments. So there won't be adopting a budget and a rate increase this year. They will be preparing to do so next year
So
for the next 2 fiscal years.
in April 2026, they will be setting 2 years of rates at that time.
I guess that will give us good information for the, I guess, their member agencies to see what they can expect the following year. Is that the main reason why they do the 2 years?
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not there at Metropolitan, but it could just give them some stability to know already what their rates are, so they don't have to go through a much harder process than we do to set their rates.
I see. Okay. Now, as for the capacity charge, I see, I guess our staff has done a good job of reducing capacity charge because you are not taking as much CFS during that peak periods, correct?
They have definitely lowered, like we did from Metropolitan, they've lowered their CFS, but it's all about cost recovery. We're trying to recover the cost of those assets that we built. And so it's more about catching the dollar amount and then distributing amongst the purveyors. So the thing about the capacity charge is that if you have access to groundwater, you can do everything possible to get off our system during the months of May and September,
Right.
which will then lower your portion of that capacity charge. We do have one purveyor, Crestview, that does get off our system completely during that time, and they have no capacity charge.
So Calleguas does not have that opportunity to do that during our normal operations because we don't.
We could not get capacity off of Met, no.
Not completely, but to reduce the.
We try to manage it so that we're not peaking, but there's limitations
Of course,
to what we can achieve there.
You know, when people start,
structure or supply.
when agencies come online and start taking a lot of water, we've got to start pulling water from Metropolitan.
How much does it vary our fixed cost? What it takes to run Calleguas year to year I'm guessing it's about the same every year minus a couple percentage increases here and there, right?
It would be. It has a lot with the admin operating expenses. That's more of our fixed costs. I mean, some of it would be, it's not variable from a water selling standpoint. I mean, the variable portion of our rate is Metropolitan.
So could we potentially make our cost fixed? So our purveyors know what it's gonna be every month?
We could potentially start doing fixed charges for our, to make our revenues. It would definitely, help us be more stable because it's a steady revenue for us. Purveyors aren't going to want to necessarily be paying more fixed revenues, which is their fixed costs. They like it more based on how much water they take.
Yeah, but our infrastructure that benefits the purveyors costs what it costs. It doesn't cost more or less to run our infrastructure based off of what they take. What it ends up being is one or a different purveyor ends up paying more depending on their capacity, right? A capacity charge
Well, on the capacity charge,
for that.
it depends on how much you're taking during that peak week to help pay for these emergencies. Because when we have an emergency and we've got to get that water all the way up to Simi Valley, we've had to put all of these assets in order to get it there. That's the pumping stations, the well field, we've got to pump that water from the well field all the way up to Simi Valley and Thousand Oaks.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm really disappointed to see the drastic increase of Metropolitan. Yeah, I mean, we're over a 5-year period, we're going up almost $1,000, right?
It's pretty extensive. And I think that's part of the discussions, we have to continue to have with Metropolitan is what are they doing with this money to benefit us?
Right, exactly. But with that in mind, what can we do to better project what our services cost our purveyors and what it costs to run our district? Right? I guess that's what I'm getting at. And I think I heard Metropolitan talking about, making part of their budgets fixed charges, right? And I think the more I look at these budgets, the more it makes sense, right? It costs what it costs to run our district. It doesn't cost more or less money because they're using more or less water.
No,
So,
The discussion that Metropolitan is having though is a slightly different one because their rates are, Dan's presenting the rates here. The part that you're not seeing is the ad valorem tax that they also collect, which is a tool we don't
we do.
have. So they can kind of toggle between what's on the ad valorem that is fixed, fixed revenues to address fixed costs, and variable revenues to address variable costs. We don't have the right to ad valorem tax, so we don't have that same tool.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind about Metropolitan is their water is a fixed cost. That state water project is a fixed cost to them. It's not a variable. It doesn't matter how much water they get. It's just a cost. That is that amount of dollars.
I guess there's a big disparity between the purveyors and us and Metropolitan, where purveyors depend on their revenues month to month or bi-monthly. They bill based on the water sales. If they are charged fixed charges, they may not have enough money to pay, or they have to borrow more money to pay the fixed charge, if it's very large fixed costs.
Potentially. I mean, it depends on what the purveyors are doing. I know that the purveyors do have their own fixed costs that they do put on those bills. It's not all variable. I mean, if you live in any of these districts, you look at that bill and there's fixed charges that you pay every month that's set.
Yeah.
And then you pay a variable rate on the amount of water you take.
In fact, I think I've had this discussion with you before about how purveyors, they actually can do a ratio between what the fixed costs are versus the volumetric sales. So
Yeah.
it's like 25-75 or something.
And this is an industry-wide discussion because, you're dealing with, as you know, most of our costs are fixed. Most of our revenue is variable. And we've been trying as an industry to understand the right balances between those fixed costs and variable costs. Because the variable costs, how much water people use, there has been a need to charge them for it so that people reduce their demand. You need a price signal to make that happen. So what is the right balance? Because there is value to the water being available when you need it, whether you've turned on that tap or not.
right, and we're pushing conservation and that, in turn makes people use a lot less water, which means we may or may not be getting all the funds we need to run our district the way it needs to be run. And I think all of this really brings up the point that we need to figure out how to work with Met to keep our costs reasonable and also do that in-house a little bit and look at doing fixed costs. It might not be so popular, but I think it's the right thing to do.
I was going to bounce off of Director Pacala's statement where there's a great disparity as you go up, even at Met, there's a great disparity between smaller districts and the larger districts. And, that is very clear in, I'll call it a pricing structure, but a pricing scheme that affects individual stakeholders differently depending on their size and voting strength. So, yeah, I mean, this just goes back to the intensity of our effort to affect things that Met to represent smaller districts more fairly.
Well, and I think this is a timely discussion, and I think it is, what you're discussing is a much longer term kind of,
They're doing rates now. Let's look at it.
I don't think that's,
It's not,
it's impossible in the time frame that's available to us.
the purveyors would be really upset too if we ditch this and tell them we're not going to adopt rates until December.
Yeah, but I think you can start to have that discussion and look at what our options are The purveyor meeting this month will focus on rates, and Dan will be presenting this information, as well as we have an outside speaker about from an organization called, US Water Alliance, about the value of water. And so not just how do you charge for it, how do you make people understand why it costs what it costs?
Yeah.
So I think this is a bigger picture conversation, and from a timeline perspective, there would be no way to completely.
Right, you couldn't do it for this year, but maybe next year, or the year following, I think we need to start looking into it and looking at the options.
Here's what I'd like to propose in that regard then. We already have a finance committee meeting on the calendar in May. I think that meeting would be a good opportunity to kind of brainstorm different strategies and start to craft a path forward for evaluating them. Dan, are you comfortable with that? I know we didn't talk about this.
It's pretty quick to start and now analyzing a bunch of,
Not suggesting we analyze by May, just talk about what we could do to explore.
yes, absolutely.
Well,
I mean, I am also looking at doing a cost of service study. It's in the budget for next year. That can be kind of rolled into this, and that would definitely come up with some good ideas of ways to increase fixed revenues.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're doing a cost of study. You said it's up 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's about 10 years.
14. I think it's time.
Yeah, I would agree.
As far as the taxes, at one time, I thought Metropolitan was looking into putting the state fixed costs on the tax roll.
That has been done to some degree. They have, when Met was originally founded, they had to be able to pay for infrastructure without having any water sales, to pay for the Colorado River Aqueduct. So they were, as part of the Metropolitan Water District Act, given this taxing authority. They started out at the percentage has changed over time. It was higher and then it diminished, and then last year it went up to help moderate some of the rate increases.
So they have the ability to put the fixed costs of the state water project on the tax roll. That's it.
Yes, and not just the state water project,
Any fixed costs.
any fix. Is it just state water project? Well,
There are certain limitations to what they can put on the ad valorem. But essentially, the bonding of the state water project facilities can be put on.
Only bonding portion of it. We don't have that opportunity for us to put in the tax roll.
we do not.
That means law has changed or it could.
Well, the Met was formed, so we're a special district. I should say a municipal water district on the Municipal Water District Act of 1911.
Right.
Met was formed under a very specific act. There is a Metropolitan Water District Act. That's what created Metropolitan. So yeah, they have their own special rules that were carved out as part of that don't apply to other entities.
But we do have a standby charge of
We do.
$5 per acre. We do that on ours.
That is correct.
Dr. McMillan, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Should I continue? So because water rates are based on us developing the budget, I'm just going to say that, we do the water rates based on what the revenue requirements are from the budget. We develop the budget first, kind of figure out what the water rates need to be. That's how it's set. So the water rates fund both the district's operations and the capital improvement project. We do try to keep the increases to a minimum. We are still working on recovering reserves. So we're trying to keep the costs low and get our reserves built back up and maintain the district's reliability and resilience like we have in the past. We're trying to maintain our excellence. I continue to do conservative water estimates for our water sales. I try to be realistic, especially in the year that I'm doing it. But, as we look along, it's better off to be conservative than it is to be overly aggressive, because if you don't hit your water sales, it goes.
Just a comment. I agree with you about conservative. I hope you're not too conservative. It impacts the rates.
So I'm going to say that this year is the first year in 2 years that I'm actually going to be exceeding. The 2 years prior to that, my water sales estimate was higher and we came in lower. So it has its good years and bad years. The 76,000 out of 73 is actually, in my estimation, is pretty decent as far as estimating.
Well, and it is dependent on how much precipitation we get here locally, which is impossible to predict.
It is, and that's part of the thing. Like rain, we were looking halfway decent last year until it rained in all of the spring months and then kept down all the way through June, then picked back up till July. And so we have been trying to rebuild reserves. This is going to be the first budget year that we are actually budgeting a positive. You'll see that when I get to the long range finance plan. We've been spending more cash than we've been bringing in for 3 years straight. This year is close, and we probably will be in the positive due to savings, not because we didn't budget, it's because we didn't spend it all. And we have more water revenue this year. So we're increasing because when we use the reserves, we increase conservation. We were doing that dollar per acre foot or square foot of turf replacement, which was a big cost to us. The loss in water revenues was huge. In the 1 year, we went from the 89,000 acre feet down to 60. So that was a 30,000 acre foot loss in just 1 year. And that was a huge hit to our reserves. And with all this loss in reserves, it's really limited our ability to do anything when Met comes with these high increases. I mean, the other problem is they are 75% of our water rate. So, I mean, us not even raising our rates is a blip in that, and it barely even lowers it. So it doesn't really do that much for us to not charge any increases on our water rates. The other thing we're always looking for is to maintain our debt service coverage through our budget, because that's important for lenders. We're going to be looking to borrow money in the next couple of years, and it's good to see that we have that debt service coverage. The borrowers like it, the rating agencies like it. So it's important for us to maintain that. So again, we're looking at water sales for 25-26 of 75,000 acre feet, to 2.7% increase. Right now, we're a little over 76,000 is my estimate that we're going to be at by the end of this year. But it really depends on how rainy it is and how hot it is, because the hotter it is, they will start watering their lawns more, which will then increase water sales. That increase, we're looking at $147 million, which is a $15.7 million increase. Again, it's a tier 1 increase of the 8.6 that helps bring in all that additional revenue. There's the graph that I was talking about. Oh, 87,000 acre feet down to 60. So, I mean, it drops significantly. And, 60,000 and then 65,000. I was budgeting 73,000 on that 65,000 acre foot year. So we were quite a bit short that year. It rained a lot more than was anticipated. And there's not much you can do about it.
I think you can do much.
That's a really big.
I'm that good of a weatherman sometimes. I try my best. So looking at other revenues, one of the good stories is that property tax revenue is still increasing significantly. I've added 1.35 million to the budget for this next upcoming year, which is helping us also maintain and build reserves. Power generation, I'm leaving at 600,000. We're on pace for about 600. So I think we're in good shape there, as long as nothing like a drought hits, and we should be in good shape. Interest revenue is also increasing, but that's mostly on the construction side. We did send $12.5 million to Metropolitan, which is bringing down our operating cash, our investments. So we don't have as much in there to earn interest on.
But I would point out that prepaying for that water is going to save us huge amounts of money in the long term.
I'm going to get it back. So it's going to be something I'm going to deduct off once we do it, because we earned interest on that. Salinity management pipeline, I continue to decrease these revenues. The production from Camarillo has been a lot less than we anticipated, and Camaros has been offline a little more than I anticipated as well. So I keep lowering the expectations. Hopefully they pick up and go the other direction. Most of the other revenues are unchanged, so there's nothing really to say there.
Mr. President, just a comment on SMP. It looks like on a long-term basis, it's going to pay for itself for a period of time. Is that the plan?
That is the plan.
Okay.
We do have quite a few additional dischargers. For those of you who are attending the symposium, AWA symposium tomorrow, Fernando will be giving an update. And while we have 3 current dischargers, 2 of whom pay to discharge, we have 4 or 5 dischargers that are in the works to some degree. Some of them have signed a discharge agreement. Others are a little bit earlier in the process, but there's a lot of promise and activity there.
That's what I'm waiting for.
I know you are.
All right, so looking at the operating expense side, overall, we increased operating expenses by $14.4 million. Of course, $13.5 million of that is all related to Metropolitan. So the majority of it is going right out the door. We are looking at another $737,000 increase in the ratings to serve, 4th year in a row. The capacity charge is increasing a little bit for us on a fiscal year basis of $150,000, but that's based exactly on what Met says we're going to owe them. So looking at the administrative operating expenses, these are basically for our operations. We're looking at an $863,000 increase over the year. That's a 3.1% increase. Overall, salary and benefits increase is the majority of it, $749,000. Some of it's related to the COLA. I currently have a 3.5% COLA in there that was put in when I first started this budget. I'm going to continue to look at it because I know right now we're closer to 3% the last few months. And if it continues at the 3% level, I may lower it a little. I'd rather have it higher than lower, so I don't have to come back to the board for additional budget. If we don't spend it, it's some savings. We are looking for one new position. We're looking for a GIS analyst. I'm going to have Wes kind of talk real quick about his new position so that everybody can get understanding. This is what we're proposing in the budget.
Good evening, board. So we do have GIS specialists is what we are looking to add to our array of people in the IT department. As you guys know, the IT department is 2 years old. And as we've started to inherit a lot of items that we had going on that were being handled by various departments throughout the years, one of the areas that we have been working on is our new asset management system that we'll be doing we're replacing our time management system that we are currently using. It is a GIS centric system. And as we've gotten into the process of this upgrade with CityWorks as the contract that we have out there, we have a very realistic approach to the fact that our staff does not qualified enough to be able to make all the changes we need in-house to be able to support that system going full-time forward. The Esri world that everybody is living in, when we go into Esri, a lot of people indicate, Esri is a pool. You can drink as much as you want from it and you can gain as many things as you can possibly gain out of it, but you have to have a talented enough staff to be able to work within that system because it is definitely different than anything else that we're doing. So we're looking to get that additional person that will be more knowledgeable in it, be able to jump straight in and get our program on task. This isn't just to fix an asset management system, to fix the tax system to work with that. This approach is actually holistic throughout the whole entire company. Projects gets all of the projects uploaded. That gives us all of our data in Esri to be able to take that. Our field people, the dig alert people, are able to use that system to be able to make qualified decisions out in the field where our assets lie at. With the integration of all of the different portions of that system, we'll be able to make better improvements upon how much time we're spending on maintenance, how much time we're spending on correctives. But it does promote throughout all of our systems, even including our resources department. As you guys know, for our new website, we have a map that's on there that says where all of our purveyors areas we are now, so that you can look on there, you can look up your address and find out what water purveyor you actually report to. That's all integrations that all go into this Esri software, and we need somebody qualified that can go ahead and take the reins and with that system.
So I'm actually this morning through LAFCO, the county changed the way they manage their GIS system, and actually LAFCO, even though they're not part of the county, they buy into the county's GIS system.
We do too. And that's helpful for all your base mapping and your road and your parcel mapping.
Yes.
It doesn't help for your specific needs, like our facility system.
Additional.
This would be additional. This is an area of concern that I have had since I was a project manager 15 years ago. It's really not just an underutilized tool, but it's really valuable to our productivity and accuracy. And I think it's one of those things, like once we have it, we're going to wonder how we lived without it. We have been limping along for a very long time in this regard.
As part of this, you'll also have a maintenance management system as part of this?
Yes, so they tie in together. Before you joined the board had approved a contract to transition to the CityWorks system, which coincidentally is also what Ventura County Waterworks is transitioning to. But that transition process, I think, has really highlighted some of the challenges we have with our current GIS system. We had a maintenance system. We're transitioning to a much better, more robust, and one that's commercially available. Our old one was custom. So like anytime we tried to do anything, it was a big production. Once these things are up, we'll kind of get the GIS up to where it needs to be and then continue to maintain both the GIS as well as facilitate the O&M maintenance of the broader system.
Yeah, as President Avila mentioned, As long as there's a coordination with the county, I know about the county system. They are coordinating with all the public agencies.
Yeah, and we do, I don't know what we pay per year, but we,
It's like $1,400 or $1,500. It's not an substantial amount, but that's what gives us access to all.
it serves as the base map, but it's like a starting point you
They're
build on.
increasing. So
I'm sure that's,
LAFCO went from paying about 1,400 a year to 25,000 because they're gonna change it to based off of how much of it you're using. And if we're using it quite a bit, we're gonna get hit a little bit higher this year.
I'll be definitely looking into that then to figure out if there is any other implications on that. So depending on how they're using it compared to how we do. I know we get base map layers off of them and then we just import that into our system so that we're not like connected to their system full time. So that's all housed within our own GIS system ourselves.
What they mentioned was before, I guess it was kind of divided amongst all the agencies. They changed it to, from what I understood, based off of what you're using it for and how much you're using it.
Okay,
Very interesting.
good point to know ahead of.
Thank you. Appreciate that heads up.
Thank you.
So with that, we're also looking at reclassing a couple of positions. I'm going to start with the first one was the assistant HRM manager position, which when Grant retired and Tricia got promoted into the manager position, we still had that position available. And so we're going to transition that over to the O&M department, which is our biggest department and is really run by just one manager. And I can have Omar talk about that and the other two positions that he's looking to transition to.
Good evening, board. So as Dan mentioned, O&M is a larger department. We do have quite a bit of infrastructure. But one of those needs is make sure that for myself to be able to focus on the planning and the development of the programs. I would like to say that having an additional resource out in the field that is manager of the projects, ensuring that the maintenance is all getting done, recording data, providing information. It will give us a successful plan of moving forward. And it also gives us a succession plan in the future, should I win the lottery. The other positions, which is the senior maintenance crew leader, the objective is to develop a task force that is responsible for our painting, coating, and cathodic protection. And it provides an owner within our operation to manage and oversee that program out in the field. That includes any presentations or any data that we need for pictures and everything else, and establishing the standards of how we're going to maintain our system from here on out. And the final one, which is a little bit more complex, is the cross-connection specialist. Historically, we've operated under Title 22, Title 17 of the Safe Drinking Water Act, but recently the State Water Resources Control Board changed that, and they developed a new cross-connection policy handbook. And that made it to where the American Water Works Association is now the governing certification agency. The County of Ventura has stepped away from the program, and they're no longer going to be managing or funding that program. So with that, we now have to have a contracted tester that is certified through the American Water Works Association. Caveat is they also created a cross-connection specialist certification, which is new to the industry. Everybody's just kind of spinning on how they're going to manage that. So we did get a preliminary cost from one contractor. There's not many out there, but it was about $178,000 a year. So we'd be better suited just to train one of our staff members, get them certified, and then we can manage this program ourselves, do all of our reporting to the state, get them certified to the American Water Works Association, and even help some of our purveyors on how they're going to be able to comply with this new mandate.
For the cross-connection specialist that you're proposing, is that a full-time work for that person, or could that person do for other agencies and make money for us?
So under the new regulation, we used to do the backflow testing. Now they're required to do a cross-connection and potential cross-connection hazard assessment of every facility we have, every pipeline that we can visually inspect, as well as all the turnouts for our purveyors. It requires an outreach and education for our purveyors annually to inspect their pump systems, make sure that they have the correct cutoff so they don't overpressure or damage our system. So that has to be done every 5 years. And if you look at how spread out we are, it will be a full-time position.
Okay.
Well, they're going to be busy.
Yeah.
No,
Although this is obviously more work and more effort, do you see a significant benefit to us for having this data and tracking this?
On the cross connection?
Yeah.
Yeah, it will allow us to look at every potential hazard we have that could contaminate our water system. Or any new project that we have has to be evaluated also by the specialist to look at any potential hazards as well. And then when we have any of our purveyors putting in new pumping systems, we have to evaluate that to see how it impacts us. So there is a benefit. If you were to hire this out, we still have to take whoever we hire out around. So that person still, we still have that labor to take them to all of our facilities and do the assessment.
That was one of the factors in proposing this as a reclassified position was like, it's
Economic benefits, and we need,
it's more affordable to do
by
it.
law, you require it.
The accumulation of that maintenance worker having to take this person around for the next 5 years. You just, turn them and turn them into that person.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and similar to what, if I jump in, similar to what Omar said about the senior maintenance crew leader, that's going to be the coatings and paintings owner. Developing someone in-house that has the level of expertise and ownership of that portion of our district is a huge intangible benefit to bringing it in-house.
Well, and that's kind of why I asked about the benefits is usually if to do something in-house is more expensive long-term than to rent the product or hire it out or something. But in this case, if they're equal, then the benefits to have them in-house is a huge asset. So.
The only question I have is that, so does AWWA have a cycle of training or retest or evaluations, or do they have to do something every couple of years that
Yeah, it's,
where they are?
yes, great question. It's similar to the operator certification program. You have to take the prescribed courses to qualify to take their certification exam. Once you pass it, you have to renew it every 3 years. You have to have contact hours just as the operators do. And there's only a few courses that are actually approved by the state, and the majority of people go to the courses put on by USC, which is very involved. American Water Works Association just happened to create a course, so you can take one of their courses for that certification as well. There is an extensive waiting list of people trying to get into the courses, not so much for the certification exam because they're having that about every 2 months, but actually getting into the courses and completing them. So, and we do have a plan in place for that, should this be approved. Thank you.
I'm going to keep going. So some of the other increases that we're seeing, we're looking at increases in the fuel costs as we are running to more in these PSPS events and we're having to run our generators more. We're using more of our diesel fuel. We ran into that this year when we had to come back to the board to increase our purchase order because we were buying a lot more diesel fuel. Utilities are going up. We got a notice from Edison that they're looking at 13% increases. So we had to increase our budget for our electric. Operating supplies, we're trying to keep them down, but the prices are going up. We're looking at tariffs coming, and insurance is continuing to increase on us. So those are some of the other increases in the budget. We are still trying to contain the costs as much as possible as we're going along. I just want to point out that last year we did cut $2.5 million out of the budget on the operating side. So that was our starting point. So when we're adding this little bit for the operating side, then we're not adding that much. We did pose reclasses for those positions rather than looking for new additions to the personnel. That is saving us quite a bit of money. Both those senior, two of the maintenance workers are only going to cost us about $20,000 annually to do move those two positions. we do find savings where possible. We are cutting money out of the consultant's budget this year to the tune of about $350,000. And we are starting to buy O&M supplies this year. We're going to get that budget as much as possible because we're trying to get ahead of tariff increases. There could be availability problems. So we are already working on that this year, and hopefully that'll help us for when we look for stuff next year. So we're trying ways, everything possible to save the district money.
How does the conversion of the maintenance workers to those other positions affect our available staff for maintenance? Because you said those were full-time positions, so we just effectively be losing two maintenance workers.
So the focus that maintenance has done in the past has been a lot of weed abatement and control. And we looked at the cost to increase the outside service for weed abatement versus the cost for us to perform the weed abatement, and the cost for outside services to perform the painting and coatings. As you can imagine, painting and coatings cost a lot more than weed abatement. So it was beneficial for us to not have our staff focus on weed eating and focus on painting and coatings.
Oh, that makes sense. Thanks.
And bringing some additional organization to the way in which that painting and coating is spread out over the year proactively, rather than, I mean, as you guys know, most of us here know, reacting to something takes more time and money.
Especially when
it's being proactive. And so we're trying to, through the assigning an owner to that painting and coatings crew, get ahead of the ball. The time savings on
It's
resources on that end will make up for.
preventative maintenance. The position is essentially a preventative maintenance specialist to get ahead of the work.
Yeah. That goes along with President Avila's request about doing just that, right?
Yeah.
So that's good.
Going back a little bit based off of your last question, it's something I had thought of when Director Pacala mentioned, can we farm him out? The person was, rates are increasing so much. What can we do to maybe bring in additional revenue? And I was just sitting here thinking, can we invest in, say, property or storage, things that we can, lease out so that people pay us money. We put that money back towards the rates to benefit our ratepayers. Are there stuff we can look at?
We can look at it. I mean, you got to realize that you're going to be putting capital outlay on there, and it's going to be a long time to recover the costs first. I mean, you're putting capital money out that you're not going to spend on CIP projects to try to make money on this. And it's got to have a good cost recovery timeline.
Yeah.
Be something that's beneficial.
It might be worth looking into, if we were able to grow, we're able to create a business that will bring in, good additional revenue that we can put back into the rates and offset some of those rates. Might be really good for our ratepayers and to get ahead of a lot of what we're seeing from Matt. Just thought, but.
Okay.
Lemonade stand.
Yes, we got it for that.
All right, looking at our debt service coverage, you can see we've been slowly increasing since the 21-22 year where we had the drought and we dropped down to the 1.44. 2025-26, we're looking at a 2.53 debt service coverage, which is the highest we've had. You're seeing that 3.44, but that was an anomaly year where we had two bonds drop off. And so we had no debt service for a couple of bonds. And then the following year they kicked in and we had the low water sales. It was like a double whammy for that year. The main reason it's increasing from 2.05 to 2.53 is because we refinanced those bonds. It actually had a huge impact on our debt service coverage, and it's going to continue to affect it going forward. So that was definitely a positive for us. I'm just going to move right into the long range finance plan. I only got like 2 slides on this, so this will be pretty quick. I'm just going to point out the green areas are operating. You can see that this year we're budgeting for a negative 711,000 if we actually spent all of our budget and hit our water sales. We're not. I think we're going to be positive, but I'm just showing this on a budget basis. But looking forward, you can see how we're starting to build reserves. If we adopt this budget, we're going to be at $1.25 million adding to the reserves, and it continues to increase for the next couple of years. You can see where we are, the second green line, where we're at budgeting for $6.6 million in unreserved, which is our ability to spend money that's not we can put it out there and do additional things. That's pretty low for us. We used to be in the $20 million range and now we're down to 6. I'm just looking to get us back to the, 12 to $14 million range, and then we can start figuring out where we want to be. And you can see that's going to take us to 2030 based on the analysis that I'm doing right now.
I see you are projecting a bond issue 2026.
Yeah,
What is that bond for?
I'm looking at it. I'm just. Yeah, so you can see that we've got a pretty robust capital project program. And so right now, the top line is a loan that we have that is $20 million. And by 2027, I'm going to probably look to refinance that loan. And when I do that, I'm also going to be looking to grab another $30 million for a $50 million loan bond proceeds. We have a few big projects coming online that are coming up towards construction. We've got the crew building that's coming back to the board for approval eventually, as well as SMP3 that's going to be moving up to Santa Rosa Valley. Those are some larger projects that are coming, as well as the Lindero pump station that we're out to bid on right now. So with some of these big projects, it's beneficial for us to borrow money. Our debt service coverage is very high, and we have plenty of cash, which is another thing that the rating agencies like. So it's going to be beneficial for us to do the bond issue at that time. So that is definitely something we're looking at. And you can see it's going to remain our cash available, which is the blue line for the construction, a very healthy over $100 million, which is where I like to try to keep it before we start doing more bonds. And you can see that even with that bond issue, we're still maintaining a very healthy debt service coverage ratio. We do dip in 2028 when that first bond hits, but we start building it right back up and we'll go back to 2.5 by 2030. And if all of these projects go through, we're probably looking at another bond issue in 2031 because our cash will be dipping pretty good by that point. Just to kind of go over this is what we're always striving to do. We're looking to always operate efficiently and effectively, which helps us maintain lower budgets. In the Calleguas portion of the rate as affordable as possible. We're trying to keep it somewhere that's in the normal range for increases. And we do that by trying to cut costs and run as effectively and efficiently as possible. We'll continue to rebuild the reserves because the next drought could hit and we could be in the same position where we're going to have to use those reserves again to make us through until we can get the rates back in line and get moving forward again. So we want to have that cushion there so that we can use it when it's necessary. One of the ways is to continue to budget conservatively, not too conservatively, realistically conservative, and make sure that we've got some good, vision going forward and what's going to happen. And then last is to maintain that strong debt service coverage to build infrastructure into the future. So with that, I don't think there's going to be any questions. We pretty much stopped for all these questions as we were going along. Unless there's some additional questions on the finance plan.
Question from the board.
There is one more slide.
There is 2 more.
Outside.
This is where we get to the important. So what I'm asking with this whole presentation really is for us to set the public hearing date for June 18th, 2025. That gives us the 60 days necessary for people to comment on our rates. In between that time, next Thursday, I will be discussing rates with the purveyors, letting them see portions of this slide. I'm not going to go through the budget with them, but I will go through all the rate slides. And then we are going to discuss the budget in detail on June 4th, where we go through all the detailed lines. You can see what everybody's doing, more information than you'll ever want on our budget. And then we're going to be adopting the budget and the rates on June 18th. And then from there, we're going to continue to support all of our purveyors as they learn about these rates and help them in any way that they seem possible, because these rate increases are still larger than what we've had in the last 10 years. Done.
All right.
So
I guess
one more question.
this is the portion where I have to open it up to public. Do we have questions or comments?
If anyone online from the public would like to make public comment at this time, please use the raise hand feature. There are no raised hands.
Okay, board, Director Robert.
I just wanted to humbly request that when you do discuss rates and rate increases, if it would be possible to identify a little more specifically where we succeed in saving money or bringing finances into the district that offset costs, if we could highlight those at the same time, just to kind of say, this is the rate increase that we have to do despite these efforts that we do. I think that would help kind of smooth
Yeah,
that.
we didn't talk about any of the capital grant funding.
I mean, it's all mostly on the capital side though, that isn't really helping the operating side, but still, we can still bring it up. We have a lot of capital grants that are coming that are going to help fund a lot of these capital projects.
And I think people understand, yes, it's budgeted differently, but it's all money that we have to spend or save.
And the problem is that a lot of this too is us trying to rebuild our reserves. And I mean, cities are in the same position, all of their water districts, because everybody got hit with this. All of a sudden, there's no water sales.
Rebuilding reserves, what does that do? It makes us more resilient, more reliable.
Yes, and it also allowed us to smooth those rates some so that we weren't doing these large increases that Meta's doing, trying to catch up.
I think hitting those few high level items really kind of helps people understand that we're not just saying, well, it costs this, so that's what it costs. It costs this and we work on it. We really try hard and we have investments that offset some of those costs. And so I think that's an opportune time to convey that.
I'll mention the prepaid water as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a big one. We did have this big cost, and I think a lot of people understand now more than ever is things now usually cost less than things in the future. So, yeah, I just say it's a great time to kind of convey those things.
Now, would it be beneficial to do, 2 years like Met does for our rates? So we only have to bring this up every 2.
I think it gives us more flexibility to change easily. Met got stuck when that drought hit. They weren't able to navigate as quickly as we were. We definitely were ahead of the game by making changes before they did.
There was a time when we were trying to sustain no bigger than what, 6% for purveyors, and of course, Met
Yes,
big impact on that.
yeah, and we would,
Being more nimble than Met allows us to make changes quicker than they do, not necessarily to Met's benefit, but to our benefit.
right,
So.
Such as being able to pre-purchase that water.
right.
Just a question about the notice. I know we have purveyors meeting every month. And your staff does a great job of giving all the information. My perception about purveyors meetings are staff comes there, I don't know how much they pass on to the higher ups, like who makes the decisions. Do we have a process at Calleguas where we notify all of these purveyors, either directors or general managers, when our budgets are being heard?
All the general manager level people, and of course that varies by type of organization. So in the cities, that's typically either someone who's like over water or someone's public works director. For the water agencies, obviously it is a general manager. We do notify them. They are the ones who are invited to the purveyor meetings and they get the correspondence. We do not typically engage directly with their elected officials. We do rely upon them to then pass that information on to their governing boards, their city councils, advisory commissions, whatever kind of format or structure they have. But all of the general manager, public works director, water, type people are covered in our distribution.
Yeah. My perspective is I'd rather have the purveyors come and make comments during a budget hearing than complain about it later on. That's my hope.
Yeah, and they have, I mean, they hear here and they give us, like last year, if you'd have been around for last year, we heard a lot when those increases were coming through. And the other thing I want to point out is that these rates that I'm proposing right now for 2026 were the exact rates I was telling them that were coming in 2025. When I was doing those projections on there, these were the exact same rates. It hasn't really changed.
But when Dan gives the presentation of the purveyor meeting, he can emphasize that obviously these two upcoming board meetings on June 4th and June 18th are both excellent opportunities for the purveyors, whether that be their electeds or their staff or their residents, their customers, to make their voices heard.
Yes.
Because what I heard on the other side was, well, we don't even know. We didn't know about it. And they should come and speak.
To that point, would it be worth combining kind of the two thoughts there and the high level points that we want to convey with the proposed budget, would it be worth putting that into a small shareable 1-minute thing? This is what we propose, this is what we try, this is our, this is the good that we do, so that those purveyors can send it to their elected officials, they watch it for a minute, they get the tone of the conversation and what we want to do. Because, for me, even when it's something that I'm not particularly interested in, you've got about a minute of attention before I go on to the next thing. And so if we can share these in little packets, that may be something that's more easily digestible.
Yeah, let's have our staff management team can discuss that because
Idea.
I mean, we just spent almost an hour on this presentation. I don't know how we distill it down into a minute, but we can certainly look at ways to convey the information. And I think the upcoming purveyor meeting is another great opportunity to find out what is it the purveyors want from us. And we did a lot of that last year as well. Because we don't want to create things and they're like, well, this isn't useful to me.
Sure.
And they are not shy about telling us what it is that will be useful to them. So
Last year they weren't really expecting these increases. Nobody was expecting it to be this, like what came out. And I think it's going to be comforting that these rates are exactly what they were expecting. And it's going to be what's going to happen next year.
Yeah.
And I can't really answer that on the metropolitan side.
yeah, so maybe we change our roundtable topic at the purveyor meeting to be what can we do to support you?
Okay. Well, thank you for making a lot of very important information difficult to follow, digestible for us.
More comments from the board? Okay. We need to make a motion on this to schedule this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move. Schedule.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Pacala,
Yes.
Director McMillan,
Yes.
Director Robert,
Yes.
Director Quady,
Hi.
Director Avila.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, board. Thank you, staff. Moving on to,
It's water use and sales next. It's still Dan. I was wondering why Dan was sitting down and you were getting up. You're not done yet, Dan.
How's your back? Are you okay?
Yeah, are you okay?
Records?
It's better for him to be standing, he said.
Yes, it's better to be standing. Hey. Tonight we have the water use and sales report for the month of March. So in the month of March, we sold 4,374 acre feet, which is a little bit less, again, another little bit down month. We're supposed to sell 4,680. But overall, we're still doing good. We're about 56,500 acre feet, or we should be closer to 53,600. So we are looking good. And as I said before, we're on pace for about 76,000 acre feet at this point, depending on how the next 3 months go. You can see by the graph that the last 2 months have been below budget, which is kind of similar. If you look at the second graph over there is what happened last year. April was really bad and it continued to be bad for the next few months. So hopefully that's not what's happening this year. The numbers are a little bit closer. So hopefully it stays within our budget and we continue to meet our demands. Looking at the Met bill, we had $6.1 million in sales. We did add some water into storage, putting some into Lake Bard. We have the reconciliation adjustment to get to the total water purchase from Met, that's $6.4 million. CRC, RTS, those are our monthly amounts right now. The LRP funds, we did get $71,000 from Met, really just for Camarillo because they're the only ones actually producing at this point. And we did get money back for conservation costs that we had paid out to our purveyors. And so they reimbursed us for those costs, bringing us to the $7.3 million of the Met bill for the month of March, 2025. Looking at the SMP discharge, like for the month of March, we are still well behind. We're at 33.2 acre feet. We budget 78. The good news is I did see that Camarosa did come back online. They weren't up to full production, but they were putting water into the SMP. So they have started back up. For the year, we're at 531.2 acre feet. The good news is we may beat last year's. We're on pace pretty close, but we're still behind what we had budgeted, which is why I'm reducing the budget next fiscal year. Looking at power sales, it continued to be short as well. We brought a little, almost $9,000. We were expecting to bring more than $16,000. We did have several of the hydros down for maintenance during this time. Hard to anticipate that from a budgeting perspective when they're going to do that. But that's what caused the shortfall. Overall, though, we're just a little behind budget. So I do still anticipate us hitting that $600,000 mark as long as things continue to get back to the normal production. And it's only through February, so we still got 4 months on that month. Looking at the overall revenues, brought in almost $3 million, bringing our year-to-date total to 100 million. Total budget's 131, so we are still ahead percentage-wise where we should be at this point because of the additional water sales. Recycled water, we've already hit our budget for the year, so that's good. We're going to hit $100,000 for the recycled water this year. SMP continues to be a little bit behind, and power generation is like right around where it should be, so it's pretty close. So we're looking good. Cash and investments for the month, we did actually spend more than we brought in. No real reason why. I kind of looked at the expenditures. We just happened to spend more this month. I think we had a little more in capital project spending than we did in previous months. So overall, there was a little bit more going out. So that's about it. That's all I have for water use and sales.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
Well, I just had one on the power. There's not any change in the rate of reimbursement or for
I
the.
haven't checked the rates of reimbursement lately, but I think it's built into the contract, so I don't really anticipate them changing.
We have 3 different power purchase arrangements for our 5 hydros. 2 of them have rates that are pretty fixed, and 1, it offsets what we purchase elsewhere. So to the extent power costs go up, that it's commensurate with our savings, because it's basically it's the renewable energy bill credit transfer, or SBCT.
So what I'm hearing is we can increase the rate.
Alas, no. And Edison generally sells their power at a much higher rate than they buy the power from you. Even in our most favorable arrangements, even that tariff where we have a 1-for-1, it's the best we've got, but it's still not truly even.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Dan.
Now we have Ian and Henry providing a little bit of an update on Metropolitan Water District priorities.
Good evening, board. As Christine said, Henry and I are going to tag team an update on metropolitan priorities. This is something we presented to the purveyors at the March purveyor meeting. And Christine thought it would make a good update to your board as well. So a couple years ago, the previous general manager, Adele Haj-Khalil, took these 5 strategic priorities to the Metropolitan Board. And these remain kind of the latest top 5 strategic priorities of the Metropolitan Board. And Devin Upadhyay, who's the GM at Metropolitan now, has taken these and created, as his update to the board in February, put forward what he saw as his main focus areas. And so what Henry and I are going to do is kind of crosswalk between the kind of existing strategic priorities at Metropolitan as acknowledged by the board of directors, and really what Devin sees as the way over the course of this year and his tenure there at Metropolitan is going to implement these strategic priorities. And then I'm going to talk a little bit after each one about what that means for us at Calleguas and our purveyors. So take it away.
And good evening, board. So maintain organizational stability and respond to employee needs. This is a top priority for the new general manager at Met. It's been a year of transition. There's been about 3 years of general manager Haj-Khalil steering Metropolitan. When he came in, there were many identified workplace issues And at the end of his tenure, they did a survey and the confidence in the executive management and the board had gone down as a result of that. So there is a lot of work to be done. Devin Apadier, the new general manager, is a person who has had a lot of experience at Metropolitan, decades of experience, and is a known quantity. And almost immediately, the organization, we hear from internal reports, stabilized, and it was a good uptick in morale just to have that smooth transition to Devin. So that was the good news. The bad news is the contract for Devin runs through December of this year. So Devin is looking ahead to retirement. The board would have liked to have had him stay longer. It was at his request that it go through December. There's a add-on for, I think, about 6 months of continuity for whoever is the new general manager at Metropolitan. But it's going to be, he's the right person to help bring that in. But by summer, mid-fall, we're going to see where the board wants to go from there. Whether they're going to do a wider search or whether there are internal candidates. We know that there are member agency managers who are capable and interested in putting their hat in the ring for that general manager position. So more transition ahead. And also for Metropolitan, much like many other agencies, there's this generational shift. They have many retirements coming forward. Many of their new hires have relatively a small amount of experience. And so organizationally, they're facing some of the same challenges that other agencies in the water industry are facing as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that, there are operational and financial implications of the changes that are happening. And one of the things that we can do as staff is maintain good relationships, both on the operation and maintenance side and on the administrative side. So when we're on the Jensen area, so that's the west San Fernando Valley, water comes out of Jensen treatment plant. Phone call every month, a coordination call. And a lot of the folks on that call are interim operator, interim this, interim that. We see a lot of that on the admin side as well. But irrespective of that, we have staff on both sides of the house. It's very important to us to maintain good relationships with those folks. And what that allows us to do is understand things as they're happening and before they come down the pike. So we're not the last ones to hear about things that are happening. And similar as you all are aware, things we've been working on, spearheaded by Jen Vasquez. Calleguas is spending significant resources on regional workforce development. So we're doing a regional effort here again that Jen is leading, and we are piggybacking to the extent that we can on broader efforts. One of those, Metropolitan, is having a day-long workforce development meeting on May 1st that we'll be attending, and finding ways to plug into that to the extent we can, and also to do what we can for workforce development on our scale if it's not being done at the Met scale.
So Camp for Water, the Climate Adaptation Management Plan for Water, is one of the signature efforts that Metropolitan has been working on for the last 3 years. And it came in with the previous general manager. He had a strong one water approach. And it was much heralded at the time that Camp for Water was going to signal a shift from Metropolitan's previous role as a water importer to primarily a purveyor of imported water and stormwater recharge and alternative sources of water. What actually turned out over the course of its development was Metropolitan staff and the board began to understand that they're dealing with a much more complex issue than simply imported water versus local water. That there are interdependencies and unknowns and volatility that affect all of those resources. And so trying to find the right mix is really what was important. Now, Camp for Water If you think of a regular master plan, the type that many of us have been involved in through the years, you typically assess what it is that you're going to need in terms of supplies to meet demands. And then you develop a set of projects and then a financing for the project, and then you build the project. So climate change has changed a lot of that because there's increased uncertainty. And we're seeing new things happening in hydrology. I don't have to tell your board that. In 2022, we saw a projection for health and human safety supplies from the State Water Project that were not in anyone's master plan. They were completely off the board in terms of a projection. So the Camp for Water is something that began as a board-driven and initiative, but gradually they realized that it was only going to be successful if they brought in the general managers from the member agencies. And Christine has participated in the task force. Director McMillan is on that task force as well. And just this last board meeting in April, they adopted this implementation plan. The main thing that is different about this planning is rather than that classic gap analysis where you're trying to close the gap, this deals with scenario planning in which you know that sometime in the future, 20 years hence, we're all going to be living in the same future. But right now, we don't know exactly which future that is. And so as you progress toward that, you want to keep open alternatives so you can adapt to that future if there's that much uncertainty involved. And this is a concept that is often hard to understand. I think it's taken all 2.5 years or so of the Met Board's attention to get there. They all arrived and they adopted the implementation plan at their last board meeting. So a successful effort, albeit one that was charged with many ups and downs.
What's the price tag for this plan? How much did it cost?
Yeah, so this is a good example of how much are the projects going to cost? If you don't have projects in the plan, what you have is a framework for making the decisions on costs and making the right decisions. So there are no costs involved in the plan at this point, but it will inform the decisions and help the Metropolitan Board make the best decision given the available information and the future uncertainty.
Okay.
So yeah, it's different, right?
Right. And so for us, our reliability being Met's reliability, and the question on everyone's mind is costs, is, well, it doesn't have projects in it today. It is the framework by which Metropolitan will be making decisions on projects and programs that will cost money. And Calleguas being essentially a node on Metropolitan's network of reliability, Met is trying to solve for reliability and resilience for the whole network, right? And whether that solves reliability and resilience for the Calleguas node in the way that we want it, at the price that we want it, is yet to be determined. But they're going through the Camp for Water process, dovetails or parallels the water resource implementation strategy, the risks that we're going through here, in order to help make the best decision for Calleguas and our purveyors, depending on the decisions and the cost of those decisions that Metropolitan is going to make.
So water supply reliability is something that this board has grappled with ever since we went to that 1 day a week watering. And the Calleguas board and our retail purveyors have been strong advocates to address that water supply reliability. And that resulted in a resolution by the Metropolitan Board to ensure equitable reliability for all the member agencies. And between Christine and myself and Ian, we've really been relentlessly making sure that commitment has been followed through. So that is like the major interest of us. And those projects have been identified and funded and are being built, along with operational changes that help balance between the west branch of the State Water Project that serves Calleguas and the east branch, which serves other parts of Metropolitan and can be supplied by other resources, giving us net more water on our branch. That's not done. There are continued questions about what is the basic level of service that Metropolitan provides, and those studies are going to be ongoing. As you know, we have one source of treated water only. Other agencies have a different mix of resources and a greater redundancy from the metropolitan system. And so we will be investigating that and advocating for that going into the future.
And again, it's really the cost of the reliability that Metropolitan comes up with, right? And as described in the board's new model for resilience coming out of the 2023 strategic plan, Calleguas is in this, we're transforming from being a strict inheritor of Metropolitan's reliability to trying to moderate the value proposition that Metropolitan gives to us, Calleguas, and us and the value proposition that we provide to our purveyors. And if there's space between those two for us to navigate and improve upon the reliability and resilience that Metropolitan offers us, those are the types of projects and programs that we're going to want to pursue.
So given all these challenges, Metropolitan has started their 2-year budget early because they understand that they are facing kind of the same problems that your board just discussed earlier in working with Dan. You have flat variable sales that, harken back to the end of the 1980s, 1990s. You have these new investments that you're going to want to do. And the balance between having lower variable rates and higher fixed costs for investing in those new projects generally leads one way. And that's the way to higher rates. And that is something that all the member agencies are sensitive to. And we bring that perspective to Metropolitan as well. They're facing the same issues that we're facing, that our retail agencies are facing. They're getting a good head start on that, but it's many of the issues that you already touched on. What is the right balance between fixed and variable rates? How much reserves should be held in order to moderate the variability in costs that we're going to see? And what kind of assumptions should you do for water sales? You make them too conservative and you're collecting money that you may not need. You make them not too conservative and you can lower rates for a year and then play catch up for the next 3. So these are all hard issues. They're all ones that are now being discussed in a much more coherent and comprehensive way, I think, than they were over the last few years. And we'll be looking forward to lots of budget talk and cost talk in the future.
And as we just discussed, Dan, our finance manager, has been very conservative, right? Not overly conservative, but just the right amount. So Goldilocks conservative. And so we're bracing for these rate increases, but we're not sitting idly by, right? As we've talked about before, and as Henry mentioned earlier in this presentation, the investments that the board has made in external affairs and in our regional planning efforts, the RIST, and the efforts of staff to steer the public conversation and our regional resource development locally and to influence decision-making at MET the best we can. All of this is creating the ability for us to have alternatives to MET if and when we need to have them.
So finally, Devin had this focus area of modernizing water management and supporting financial stability. In essence, what Metropolitan realized is they needed a new business model, and that was part of the climate action management plan, climate adaptation management plan for water. It was something that Metropolitan staff struggled with. It was something that the Metropolitan Board struggled with. And then finally, I think it was last year, member agency managers in an unprecedented letter signed by all the general managers from all the member agencies in Metropolitan said, we will step in and help you sort out this business model. And it's been a huge commitment on the parts of the general managers. Christine and I have been involved. Dan Smith has been involved on the treated water cost recovery. And the treated water cost recovery was set as the priority for that business model reconsideration. So we've been able to continue to be strong advocates for getting equity in that. And that resulted most recently in a consensus position by 18 of the member agencies on a water rate alternative that we think moves us more towards equity than the strict volumetric. It remains to be seen whether that's going to be able to make it through the politics of Metropolitan's voting system. And President Avila mentioned earlier that this idea of weighted voting continues to dog the governance of Metropolitan. The difference, and it's the difference that's happened in this business model reconsideration, is 2 or 3 years ago, no one could talk about governance at Metropolitan. I remember in one of the camp, I was on a panel and I told the committee that there were 3 questions: who decides, who pays, and who benefits? There was like this ripple of, oh, don't bring up that. Don't bring up that equation because they aren't perfectly aligned at Metropolitan. That issue is being discussed. It was being discussed with the issue most recently of the Metropolitan Act adjustments. There are voices and other member agencies at Metropolitan that say there needs to be a larger, more whole-scale revisiting of governance. It's not a question of if, from my perspective, it's a question of when. Something that's out of whack in the way that Metropolitan's governance is going to find a different expression. And we'll be looking for opportunities to make sure that our customers in Calleguas are well served by that transition.
Mr. President, on the treated cost equity issue, based on what you know, when would that come to the board, Metropolitan?
That is identified as an early budget issue because that assumption of how that treated water cost is structured is necessary for the finance to develop that next 2-year budget. So they are looking at having a decision on that this year.
Oh, good. Good to know that. Thank you.
What's that looking like? What potential savings could we have here at Calleguas with something like that? Any idea on percentages?
I couldn't cite a percentage.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, we couldn't cite a percentage, but also the prospects are still in the mix.
Yeah.
If you will, right? There's been strong advocacy for a more rational alignment of costs and benefits. But those agencies that benefit from the status quo have a lot of power.
They do.
So it's a question, and there are many ways. There are many ways to have change not happen, and fewer ways to make change happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I pointed out at the last meeting, just on the proxy alternate vote, it was 19 yes, 14 no, 49% pass. All right. Sorry. No. Right. So those had it with only 14 votes.
Yeah, I was listening to the tape. It's 49% and
46.
46%.
Right.
3 members were absent.
Yeah. So, you know, it just,
Don't know what would have happened if the three members came.
yeah, but it shows the inequities.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what I'm showing is it's very unfair and I think that both there really shows that it's a lot bigger and they're not, those agencies that hold the power really aren't willing to share or make things a little bit more equitable. It's only gonna get worse.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't we break for, say, 5 minutes?
I think we defer the closed session. Do the house. Yeah, do house three.
Back to order. And we are at general counsel's report. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Very important
yet.
one. We have an update on staff house number 3 renovation procurements. Fernando.
Yes, good evening, Board of Directors. Give me one moment while I share my screen. Great. Okay, once again, I do have an update on the staff house number 3 renovation procurement update. So start off with the objectives of the renovation. Those include continue to provide on-site housing for critical staff to facilitate emergency response and enhance security of essential facilities. As you've heard, it's important to have staff here on site to be able to respond quickly and efficiently to emergencies, some of which we recently had to respond to. Also confirm that housing quality meets acceptable standards. Complete these improvements as quickly as possible for immediate occupancy. We have 3 staff houses and 2 are occupied with 1 vacant. And ensure work is performed cost effectively and in accordance with the public contract code, the Calleguas procurement policy, and prevailing wage law. I previously updated this board that there was some work that was already performed by staff. We investigated the electrical systems and the insulation types and condition of the house. And we also performed some demolition work, including the removal of carpet, baseboards, wall paneling, kitchen cabinets, bathroom fixtures, and closet doors and appliances. So we requested a proposal from Sourcewell Gordian, a cooperative procurement system, to try to expedite the procurement of this process. And we received a proposal in the amount of just under $655,000. Having received that proposal, staff met with the contractor and Gordian to discuss the proposal, given its high price tag. So we had a site visit just yesterday to review the proposal in detail.
I think they were quoting us to build a brand new 3,000 square foot home.
Appears that way.
So in the quote, we removed this one and then put in a whole new one.
3,000 at least.
Yeah.
4,000 square foot.
Crazy.
So I'd like to go over the proposal, just the major components, starting with the garage exterior. That portion came in at just over $147,000, and it includes the removable and replacement of asphalt immediately in front of the garage door, which is shown in this picture right now. When it rains, water instead of flowing away from the door, it actually tends to drain into the garage. The replacement of the existing roof with a Class A fire resistant roof, the replacement of damaged exterior siding, replacement of doors, replacement of the existing door, and retrofitting that opening to accept a standard garage door, painting the exterior, and replacing the exterior lighting. On the inside of the garage, we also received a proposal for just over $65,000, which included finishing the interior of the garage door with gypsum wallboard, spackling, and painting the walls. We would also replace all electrical wiring, as well as replacing the existing lighting fixtures with newer, more energy efficient LED fixtures. Moving on to the house, the exterior of the house, the work proposal for that work came in at $165,000, which includes the replacement of the roof with a Class A fire resistant roof, the replacement of the exterior siding with waterproofing wrap, painting the exterior, replacing the wood deck with a fire retardant deck, replacement of the electrical panel, and replacing of existing light fixtures, and of course, leveling the house to make sure that it's level. Moving on to the interior of the house, that work was scoped out at approximately $277,000, which includes installing new kitchen cabinets, backsplash countertops, sink, faucet, replacement of interior doors, closet doors, shower doors, replace all windows, patch, spackle, and paint holes on walls. The existing roof right now has a acoustic roof. We would scrape it and refinish the roof and paint it. Replace the gypsum board in the bathrooms. The bathrooms were found to have some water damage, so those walls were removed. New walls will be constructed. Install new luxury vinyl flooring throughout the house. Provide new toilets, showers, vanities, sinks, medicine cabinets, and hardware. Replace the existing furnace. Install recessed lighting and new outlets. Replace the ceiling fans. Replace furnace and HVAC grills, and paint the interior. So in conclusion, staff reviewed the proposal with Gordian just yesterday. We did find some errors and miscalculations in the proposal. The contractor is now revising that proposal. We're expecting a cost reduction about 10% of what was originally submitted. So in the range of $60,000 to $70,000. So next steps, we propose to, in parallel, Gordian contractor is revising the proposal, as I mentioned. Staff would prepare a bid package, requesting the board authorization to call for bids at a future board meeting. Just want to point out that bid prices may or may not be substantially less than the Gordian proposal, but it would give us two options in the near future to compare which path to proceed, whether we award the project to the bidder via the public contract code process or the Gordian contractor. So that is my update, and happy to take any questions.
This is laughable. It's an abuse of public agencies. Sorry to see that number, but sorry to be the first to speak, but board.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. My initial reaction, if there was one word, is ridiculous. But My question is, how are we, there's no shortage of contractors and builders in Southern California, so how are we putting this out for bid and how do we solicit more input? I mean, there should be a level of competition for that work. And considering that we're probably very reliable customers to deal with, I think we should really explore options there because that, for lack of a better term, the poke 'em in the eye is how I see that bid. So, yeah, we need to look for something a little more reasonable.
Yeah. Director Robert, I agree. That's why we're proposing to prepare the bid packet to put it out to public bid and see what the market thinks this work costs.
Yeah.
And that can open up to more contractors and more bids potentially.
I think this needs to take us back, needs to take a step back. And I mentioned this to Christine when we were on the train, but we were looking at that entrance, potentially building a gate with the permission of the HOA. I think we need to fast track that. I think we need to approach the HOA and ask them what their thought is on that. I think we need to get moving on that. The other thought is, and I mentioned this to Christine as well, I've craned a lot of huge objects in my career with the Navy. We should look at, if we can't get that truck through, the HOA doesn't want to give us immediate access to build a gate there. Let's crane a truck over, let's crane the trailer over, let's move it into place. It'd still be cheaper than $600,000.
We rent with money and be cheaper than $600,000.
We need to start thinking outside the box. Look at we mentioned about not being able to drive a truck up to that location. Did we ask a trucker? Did we ask a trucking company what it would look like driving to that location? Maybe have them come out and say, could you make this? Could you drive this? What would it take? Would you need special equipment? What would it take to get there?
Personality.
We need to look outside the box.
The board previously provided staff direction that they wanted this done as quickly as possible. So that has been our focus. And if we want to evaluate a wider range of options, that's going to take more time. I think the alternatives you've described will take longer to implement as well. And also take staff time to evaluate all of these options and come back to the board. The fastest path to a competitively bid solution is what Fernando has described. And that would be our recommendation. But if the board wishes for us to explore other options, we can do so. But I want the board to be aware of what is involved in the time, both the actual duration of what it would take to successfully implement a project, as well as the cost in pursuing those options.
I think taking that into consideration, starting a dialogue with that HOA may not be, just to introduce and discuss it preliminarily. Just to open the discussion. They may be like, you know what, we're happy to help and however we can, and that may change our priorities. But
it might also be, hey, can we tear it down real quick and rebuild it exactly as is? Maybe the gate's not in the cards right away, but maybe a demolish and rebuild is in the cards.
What we can do is, it would take a little longer because it would require some additional staff time to coordinate that question to the HOA, while we also prepare a bid package to publicly bid. Depending on what responses we get from the HOA, we can also reach out to local representatives of the new manufactured homes, see what kind of crane clearances and crane distances they can move something across a span. For example, what you described, moving a house from the Wood Ranch development over to the site where the house is. So certainly we can look into those things, but it would take additional time to investigate that. But again, I think the recommendation would be to have a bid packet prepared to put out this work out to public bid and see what the market says.
Well, in the past, we talked about this as a priority project. My comments are with the economic conditions we are in today, if we delay further, we don't know where we're going to end up. I mean, we have had contractors who entered the contract, they backed off. And this is a bad time to delay anything from my perspective. Sooner the better. Whatever options you have, maybe board could consider those and make a decision.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, with tariffs right now and market just
I
fluctuating.
didn't want to get into other stuff. I just said economic condition.
There is a lot of
There are,
uncertainty. in this
Exactly.
There is.
It'd almost be easier to buy a house in the HOA and just make a person gate.
Great idea. I like that.
Come in. Badge.
I
So,
understand the frustration of the board members, but reality is they're a public agency.
That HOA is not the cost savings HOA.
no, that is not going to save you any money. So,
They're probably 1.2.
But
Yeah,
it
what
could
I-
be a real estate investment.
earlier,
Director McMillan has her
Oh.
raised.
Yes, I recommend pursuing multiple avenues at the same time, and I know it's going to take more time with staff. And I'm very appreciative of that, but we shouldn't be doing this at any cost. I mean, we need to be very thoughtful and pensive about this. My question is this to Fernando, do you know how much more time it would take? Or is this just you just know it would take more time, but you're not sure at this point?
yeah, not sure. It all depends on, where the path takes us as we ask questions with the HOA, how responsive they are.
HOAs are very, sorry to interrupt, but in my experience, having worked with HOAs on capital projects, they are very variable in terms of their responsiveness, in terms of their kind of level of organization. And at this point, they're just a complete unknown to us. So we can work on preparing this bid package in parallel, look at options for removing the wall temporarily or craning a house in, but recognize that the HOA is a giant wild card.
Would it be worthwhile to discuss with them, not this big project, but just a gate for emergency access?
Well, that's a discussion we were planning to have anyways. It just wasn't quite on this timeline.
But if we could, that is something that we would like to explore. If it's worth to expedite that project, that would also support this other project. I know it is more time, I know it is more effort, but strategically, I think it might be worth it. But also something for you to workshop and kind of evaluate.
They might be more open to temporarily letting us through and then rebuilding it. If that's a start, if they're more okay with that to begin with, and we have the discussion about building a gate afterwards or during, that might make things faster, right?
I think something needs to be strategically thought of, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well then, in accordance with the direction I'm hearing from the board, and this isn't an action item, but is to, continue to pursue the two avenues that were already proposed on the slide, but also look at additional options with respect to temporarily removing and replacing the wall, or craning over the wall, or expediting the gate in the wall. And we'll see how all of those pieces fit together and come back to the board when we have more information for further discussion and decision making.
And in that exploration, it may be worthwhile to consider maybe some leave behinds to benefit the HOA. If we help, do you help us kind of thing.
Landscape.
Yeah.
Well, either way, that or,
We've often let them, this has come up once again in a couple of different projects. We let them pick the gate design.
sure.
They like that.
Okay.
That's worked really, really well. We did that at both Thousand Oaks Reservoir and Westlake Reservoir, as well as other design input, whether that's landscaping or in that case, it was pilasters. We let them pick the rock, we let them pick the pediment, and they've had ownership in it. It was a little bit different though, in that we weren't asking them for a favor because we were doing that work on our own property.
Either way, those are, the things that have value to them that we can accommodate are great, critical thinking ideas that support that project. So, yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to ask this question, just even though it's probably not right to ask, but so what we've had Gordian do, it's not a Gordian knot, is Gordian has provided a template of what is essentially needed for the housing refurbishment. Is that right?
They provided a proposal with all the scoped out items that we've requested for them to price out. So that's what they provided,
400 some, was it?
177.
177, okay.
Okay.
Or excuse me, 277.
Well, yeah, it is a priority.
When you go back to, looking at different options, maybe they can't crane over a home. Maybe they're not willing to take down that fence, but maybe a container home. I know those can be craned over because I've craned more containers than I can count.
We did send you an email on the boxable one.
Yeah, got it.
Okay,
Great, more to come then.
thank you. We'll provide, come back to this board information at a later date. Thank you.
Thanks, Fernando.
Hey, do we have a general counsel's report?
Yeah, just a brief one. Since the last meeting, I've worked with engineering staff on some construction claim payment and change order issues. Worked with resources on annexation and CEQA issues. Worked with IT on a data classification policy that'll ultimately be coming before the boards. Coordinated with staff and special counsel on the Las Posas and OPV litigation, and worked with operations on some miscellaneous contract issues.
Thank you, counsel.
I've been busy.
Hey, we're gonna move over to committee meeting reports.
None this time around.
Okay, board member reports, Aqua Region 8.
Okay, on April 10th, Nate had an appointment meeting, and there were 3 candidates running for the regional board, the region's board, and Director McMillan was voted on to the Region 8 board.
Hey, Aqua JPA.
Okay, I just got today that Aqua JPIA withdrew its opposition to AB 428. I'm not sure why. I haven't looked at that, but that's a notice. And then the candidates for executive committee deadline is passed now, so there are 7 running for 4 seats, and there are 3 incumbents.
AWA, no meeting since.
No meeting. No, there was an executive meeting scheduled that is for board only, but it was postponed.
Symposium tomorrow.
Yep, symposium tomorrow. Fox County GMA.
Yeah. There was no meeting so far, but on April 23rd, there's a meeting coming up. I'll be attending that meeting.
The next one is Metropolitan, and I want to start that one off. I attended that last Metropolitan meeting. It was incredible to see Director McMillan, what she does, sitting there for so many hours. And
Days.
it's for 2 days. It was eye-opening. I can say that. It raises my level of appreciation for our Met member, a whole nother level. It was an incredible experience that I wish I had done sooner, so I could understand better what our board member does there. It's very difficult to sit there all day. I can't imagine that. I would get kind of antsy, but I recommend, my recommendation is Director Robert, Director Pacala, if you have, 2 days available at some point, join Director McMillan, go out there, sit with her for a couple days, get to know some of the other Met members. I think it's definitely worthwhile. Definitely worthwhile to shadow Director McMillan and understand what happens, the skills that it takes to just negotiate and talk and understand the other agencies. With that being said, we did get to speak. And I just want to make a quick point. And I want to bring it to the board, and this is all I want to say is when we're going there, we're speaking for the board. We're speaking for the board, not our individual selves. If it's based off of an action item, we have to stick to it. That's the way it works. And if we have other opinions or anything else, when we're going out to speak to these things, just please remember you're speaking for the board. You're speaking for yourself if the board hasn't authorized you to speak on behalf of the board. And that's it. That's all I want to say. And I want to pass it on to Director McMillan.
Thank you. And I will tell you, that was very difficult for me to have two opposing positions because board members did come up and ask what was going on, why there was such a dichotomy on the testimony, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, on April the 3rd, pardon me, I attended the Northern Caucus via Zoom. April 6th through the 8th, I attended the board meetings, and thank you for sharing the suffrage with me. It is very grueling on those 2 days. As Christine may know, because they herd us like cattle. There's never a moment to rest. Anyway, there's 21 items on my written report that you can see. I'm not going to go through those. And on April 11th, I attended the Delta Construction Authority Board briefing. And today I'm in Sacramento and will be attending the Delta Construction Authority Board and Delta Financing Authority Board tomorrow. And that completes my Met report.
Thank you, Director McMillan. LAFCO commissioners, that's me. We did have a LAFCO meeting this morning. Got a presentation from Scott Meckstrom from the Ojai Valley Sanitation District on a project that they're trying to receive grants for, which is removing septic tanks from disadvantaged communities. Commissioner Mohammed Hassan from United did bring up that Director Pacala had done a great job doing something very similar in the past. So he was Scott was looking for support from LAFCO, and we gave support. We're going to write a support letter for their grant application. We went over rates and my notes. My bag.
While you do that, I'll just mention how septic systems that get forgotten and allowed to deteriorate have exponential impact on water systems. So, you know, removing those is a very noble effort.
Yeah. And actually, you know, if going on with that, if it would help, I'd be open to doing a support letter to their district as well from our district. But we're looking at a 2.7% increase at LAFCO. The proposed budget. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading my writing. Proposed budget is $1,136,000. It's a total of 92,000 increase. And I did bring up that Calleguas, we are unjustly burdened with the higher rate due to our pass-through fees. I think it's been brought up at LAFCO before. And really our purveyors, they are also burdened with paying twice because they pay for the revenue that they have, you know, through their agencies. And then they give us, you know, going back to us, they give us their money, we give their money to Met, and then LAFCO bills us on it. So it's a pretty unfair situation. And I brought it up during the meeting, and Kai, the executive director for LAFCO, he laughed and he said, every Calleguas board member has always brought that up. Well, it must mean it's true. With that, that's my report for LAFCO. Next up is the Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance.
There was no meeting.
No meeting. Ventura County Special Districts.
No meeting.
All right. List of admin code reimbursable meetings. Director Quady.
Okay, well, I will start with 4.7 and 4.8. And I want to just say that when I left the meeting on April 2nd, I did not hear an exclusive language. I voted for 2 ways of substitution, alternate and proxy. And so having voted for those 2 during our meeting, I learned a little bit more about the fact that the alternate had been tried in 2008, AB 5885, I believe it is. And that was vetoed by Governor Schwarzenegger. And I don't know if there's some of the concerns that we learned in the legislative committee. There's talk of toxic amendments and all that kind of stuff. I didn't dive into it that deep to see if that's what was happening. But anyway, because of that concern, because of the work that the Eastern Municipal Water District did over time. Oh, and I wanted to bring up the fact that from 2008 till now, this hasn't been settled. And that's important to consider. So basically, I chose to let what I thought President Avila and I have talked about this issue before the meeting, at least once before. And basically, he was very strong on the alternate, and I was very soft, but also open to the proxy. So when I left the vote anyway, we had two that were potential items to be evaluated by the board, Met board. And I believed that I could, I tried to yield the alternate discussion to President Avila, and I would take proxy number two, the second choice, the proxy method. That would be the 523 with amendments. And basically that was the material that we had that they were voting on from the Metropolitan Water Board. And so I basically thought that we would have a greater potential of success for one of those substitutions to occur. And so I spoke on the second choice. Dr. Avila voted on and spoke on the first one. So I just wanted to say that I was not voting individually. I was thinking of possibilities, and that the long history of not having anything done since 2008 by itself kind of tells you something is amiss, something is not working with the alternate version. So I was hopeful. On the 16th today, I attended the California Water Commission and tonight's board meeting.
Okay. Director Rowe.
Sure. Let's check my notes. So since the last board meeting, not a whole lot. I viewed the Metropolitan's Legislative Committee, Metropolitan's board meeting, and tonight's board meeting. And regarding the, differing of opinions at Metropolitan, I think it's valuable that we all have opinions, and I think it's also valuable that it's valuable when we address other boards and Metropolitan as a unified force, and there's value in that. Now, that can't always happen for everything, obviously, but it's beneficial when it does. And maybe that's something that we should have discussed further here internally, or internally here. But also, the direction that we took as a board was we prefer one option, but we would be open to a second. So it wasn't a firm yes or no either way. So, there is that, but I do see that the loss of unification or perception of unification as an unfortunate. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't there, but I just heard the comments. What Director McMillan said. After the meeting, other board members made comments about conflicting messages. As a board, I think it's not good for us from a public perspective. And what I'm hearing is Dr. Quady may have understood that's what our board agreed to. I'm not exactly sure. Hopefully, we'll all work together. If there's any issues, we talk up front and not present something else to other boards on behalf of our board. That's all my request would be.
And I must say, I did talk to Director Quady beforehand and reinforced on what we had decided, but it looked like sounds like there was some miscommunication there, so.
I think I follow what Director Roberts saying in terms of there was the absence of collaboration from the meeting to April 8th, which was the Board of Directors meeting date. So that is a problem that can be solved.
Or something that would benefit having that would benefit unification in the future. More discussion on topics that we discuss, as a unified front.
Yeah, it is it was a source of confusion, and it's also from my perspective anyway, I actually thought I was doing a team effort, thinking that we were going to hit 1, 2, and 2 was what was being discussed there. We can't negotiate getting that substitute person without getting some kind of success. If there's no success from 2008, what's happening there?
I guess it depends on your strategic approach, but again, that discussion, maybe when going to discuss at a public meeting, and where it doesn't cause a Brown Act violation, right? 2 board members would be fine, maybe a little pre-planning meeting or gameplay strategy.
We did have a lunch meeting before the Board of Directors meeting, and that's on the 8th.
Right.
And so I inserted a comment in my statement saying, if we must move from the alternate selection, here's what I would endorse. So I made that modification with feedback.
All right. Sorry to interject, Director Pearl.
No.
Reimbursable meetings to report on?
Yes, on 7-C-3. I did attend 2025 State of the City of Moore Park. That was on April 10th. I was really surprised. There were more than 200 people attended the meeting. In the past, when I attended, there used to be 40, 50 people. I'm impressed with the city, the way they're conducting themselves, the public outreach. Most of the people who were there are business people, Rotary Club. All of the elected officials were represented in the city. I was happy I was able to go and witness city is doing good.
Okay, Director McMillan?
On April 4th, I did cybersecurity training on OSINT. On April 5th, I did cybersecurity training on AI hallucinations. April the 10th, the West Ventura County Business Alliance Networking Group via Zoom. April 14th, the West Ventura County Business Alliance Advocacy Committee, Business Advocacy Committee via Zoom. And then April the 16th, today's board meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Director McMillan. And for myself, since the last board meeting on the 4th, I had a phone call with the chair of Metropolitan, Don Ortega, and we had a good discussion on the alternates versus proxies and his position on it, and gave me some good advice that I put towards my presentation. And I also on that same day had a different conversation with Jay Lewitt from Las Virgenes, and his opinion on it, which was he was in support of proxies. So that conversation was him trying to talk me out of alternates and me trying to talk him into alternates.
But a good representation of how sistering agencies don't always see the same way.
And I mentioned that to him exactly. I said, look, we can't trust somebody else to speak for us. Our agency, we represent our people, our purveyors, and it differs greatly, vastly from you representing different people, different walks of life in Las Virgenes, your ratepayers. Well, also we're a wholesaler, you do direct to the ratepayers. If we tell you to vote this way for us, 24 hours prior at least, things might change. People might show up to speak, in support of an item or oppose an item. We have to be able, as an agency, to hear those people and understand where they're coming from and possibly change our position. We can't do that through you. And that was part of what I discussed. And
Are we going to discuss this?
that was
I can say that of the alternate discussion, I was actually more impressed with the executive summary material that was presented in Metropolitan Water District back in June of or May of 2008. It had more detail to it. What actually costs who what, and how it's the member agency's choice to either fund that and how it works in terms of to what extent that alternate participates. And so I think a lot of the discussion, or actually the limited discussion that we've had about those two choices, I actually feel overall we're quite unprepared in terms of being able to comment on this, because there was a lot of information, a lot of history that could have developed this. From my point of view, I think that proxies to be enforced of not telling what the other person is, being able to vote. We didn't find any of that stuff out until after April 2nd.
Directors, can I jump in for a second? We're getting a little bit far from the agenda in terms of committee reports.
We're giving committee reports.
No, I'm.
All this is part of it.
But we didn't talk, this was previously agendized as a specific item for board discussion. So I'm just trying to say we're committee reports are for what occurred at the committee. I know you had the conversation with Jay Lewitt. I'm just trying to point out the fact we may be veering from the agenda a little bit. That's all.
Well, I mean, that goes back to why we weren't unified, I guess, Scott. And with that, that wraps up my items. Discussion regarding upcoming meetings to be attended by the board.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Director McMillan? Nope. All right. Request for future agenda items. Information items.
Excuse me, there are a number of letters in the packet. It's obviously peak ledge season, so you're gonna be seeing, there's a number on I think we have 5 this time around. I suspect there will be more next time around. Charlotte, happy to answer any questions that the board may have about these letters.
I appreciate the effort taken to put them together and to send them all off to the right people, and they were well written, which is more than I could have done. So thank you.
Yeah.
Not sure if I could ask for a legislative analyst, what would happen next to the bill that we were discussing earlier? Where does it go from here?
AB 523,
Yeah.
Is it okay for Charlotte to answer that question? There is a 523 letter on the
Is that okay?
information.
If it's coming out of the letter that's on the agenda.
Right, okay, yeah.
Inspector Paul, good question. So it's our understanding that the sponsor and author at this point are regrouping and seeing what the next steps are with that bill. So that bill has not had any policy committee hearings or any votes yet, but that is the next step, would be the ball is in their court to decide what to do.
Considering this bill is still being worked, is it something that's worthwhile for general bills and bills like this that are being worked that we may be unprepared for, that we would have a conversation to maybe figure out where we align with the bill and relay our communications to in support of or against?
On this particular bill or other bills?
All bills.
Okay, other bills, maybe just brief overview of how we handle.
Legislative policy principles, sure. So your board adopted in January, our annual legislative policy principles, Director Robert, where you gave guidance to staff on what bills to weigh in on and in what way in terms of various issues that are of importance to the board. So it's quite prescribed as to how we weigh in and how we don't. When that doesn't happen, then we will bring it to your board for consideration like we did with AB 523. There was a Brown Act bill earlier this year we brought over just to make sure we're absolutely in line with what your board expects. But typically the legislative policy principles serve as our guiding light, so to speak.
And within those, would we be able to rediscuss a bill and hone in where we stand and then re-communicate a position?
You can certainly do that at any time.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, if the board, for example, wanted to reconsider AB 523, you could ask that that be agendized in the future. I would probably recommend that we wait until there's some clarity about the direction it's going, because I'm not sure we have enough information to have a meaningful.
Well, the reason I ask is, before we send something, let's really hone in where we're at.
Right.
So, and if that's something that we need to schedule to have a conversation with, or a separate meeting that's open to the public, but specifically agendized for this, kind of workshop that.
It is unusual. This particular bill, I think, is fairly unusual in its specificity, applicability to us, and where it falls relative to the legislative priority principles, because those cover 95% of what we track.
Absolutely.
But I think it's also, critical to us, judging by the voting ratios at Met. It could, one person's vote is very important, I guess is what I'm saying. So this could be potentially very impactful for future items. So I just want to make sure that we kind of hone in on what we want and what we would like and what we would support.
Sure. Well, rest assured with this bill, we will monitor it very, very closely and happy to bring it back to your board at a future date if that's what you desire.
It's important to know, Metropolitan doesn't control the assembly. The assembly does as it wishes, so.
Right. That is correct.
All right. And I think we discussed, we're gonna move the closed session, the last item, to a future meeting. Dan Cohen was unable to be here, and he was a part of that meeting, so.
In person,
he's online, but in light of the length that this meeting has already been, and the fact that the closed session is not a time critical, it can certainly wait a meeting to even 3.